Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik from Figured Out Productions. The following video is a video of some kind, and I hope you enjoy it.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Figure It Out cast for July 2021. I am your host, Adam Koralik, and I am joined today by Rob, who has barely managed to return. You're a slave now, is my understanding. So
now.
You're very busy.
Now.
And yeah, well, and also the Patreon got hurt a little bit. We had some people who had to leave, but you're still hanging in there, so I appreciate that.
R.I.P. in peace.
Yeah, but no, you're still here for now, so welcome back, Rob.
Always a pleasure to be back. How you doing, Adam?
I'm okay. Yeah, so I just want to say, thank you to all the Patreon backers. This is, of course, a Patreon-backed podcast. It comes out early for all the backers, and then it goes public later on the channel. If you want to subscribe at any time to support this, keep Rob around for the DLC that he is, in case you guys aren't clear. We have a monthly goal. As long as we're above that goal, Rob gets to stick around. And as of now, he's here. But you can also not only keep him around, but get early access to videos. You're eligible for free DLC keys. Whenever I have random ones, I throw them out on Patreon. Also, shout outs. You can pick subjects. You can even be on the podcast. You know how this goes, Rob.
I do.
Yes.
I'm used to it now.
Yeah, you're used to getting yelled at. Well, unfortunately, one of our co-pilots who usually yells at you in a very loving way.
He does nothing of the sort.
Abdullah's
amazing.
He's too nice. Abdullah is too nice, and that's the problem. He likes you, which is unfortunate, but it's okay. You know, what are you going to do?
Yeah.
Unfortunately, our boy Abdullah is not going to be able to joining us today. He's having certain issues related to his family, and it's none of our business. We just wish him very well.
Yes.
But it actually made me think of a subject, because the thing with Abdullah is he didn't give me a subject this month either, because knowing Abdullah, he has like the best subjects, so he didn't want to waste one on just us, and I don't blame him for that. He would want to be involved in the discussion. So I came up with something that I thought kind of would be interesting given the reason he's not around, and I wanted to talk about perhaps the medical plus minuses of video games. Do you understand what I mean by that?
Yes, the benefits and problems that may arise from video games, I guess, in terms of your health, both mental and physical. Yeah, now we got to get this out of the way. Obviously, neither Rob or I are in any way doctors. We are not medical in that field at all, so take everything we say with a grain of salt on this. But it's basically just cursory observation from two idiots. But this is basically how the general minus of your health when it comes to a video game. You can argue that things like you might get carpal tunnel syndrome. It's probably not very good for your posture. Obviously, you're lacking a lot of physical activity, and potentially things like eye strain. But I would argue that the pluses of that are basically the mental benefits, because it can be a very good form of escapism for people, depending on the situation they have in their lives. Sometimes, work is tough. I mean, you know this lately. You're working like constantly. Yes.
And so tell me what that's like, and how maybe
what it's like to work.
What is it like from down there? Yes. I, as a lowly YouTuber, I would never know.
So I've been working a lot lately. I've gone back to school to do the certification, so I'm doing this class and working basically every day. So I definitely agree with the mental benefits of video games. Being able to come home after a long day at work, sometimes even though I'm working, in video game sales, I work at Digital Press, it's still nice to just come home, plop down on the couch and just lose yourself in a video game. And lately I've been playing a lot of the Mass Effect Legendary Edition, which is one of my favorite game series of all time, and just it's comfort food. It really is. Just being able to kind of dive back into a game that I've played before and just enjoy it for what it is, and kind of rediscover it, it's really nice. And last night, Adam, we were talking about this. I lost power because a little tropical storm blew through New Jersey, so our power got knocked out for 6 hours. And I got home from work and I'm like, fuck, I can't play video games So what did I do? I grabbed my portable. I played my Switch a little bit in the dark, and just to get that thing. Now there is obviously the downside. You don't want it to be an addictive thing, and it certainly can be for some people that like will quit their job or or whatever. Lose contact.
Before you get a little too extreme on that, I think there's like only one game where I've ever heard anybody actually having like real life addiction problems. That typically is World of Warcraft.
Yeah.
Outside of that, I would say, I mean, that's the extreme end of the spectrum as far as that possibility is like. The people who like their house is falling apart, but the power still works in their bathroom, but they're so addicted to WoW that they just run an extension cord to their bathroom and don't deal with their house.
Yeah.
If you're following me on that, but basically, yeah, in general, I would say that video games don't offer you any sort of physical benefits other than maybe the occasional game that forced you to exercise. Most infamously things like the Wii I'm sure had that kind of thing, but there's also the activator. Those are the exceptions, but in general you don't get much physical benefit out of playing a video game. It's essentially all mental. But I argue not only is it respite for the mind, it's also a challenge for the mind. It keeps you active, it gives you puzzle solving, it just keeps your kind of creativity and energy flowing. And it also can be very educational, whether you want it to be or not. Here's a stupid example for you. But when I was a kid, one of my favorite games, and still kind of is Twisted Metal 2 for the PS1, right? Absolutely loved it. Now, in that game, it's just car combat, you're shooting at stuff. But in the sequel, you were going all over the world and going to different countries and whatever. And so, like, that game actually taught me a good chunk of geography. It's like, okay, so the Eiffel Tower, that's in Paris, which is in France. And I learned it from that freaking game, of all things. To the point where, I'm not even kidding, when we eventually went to Paris when I was a kid, I remember, like, seeing the Eiffel Tower, and that game had taught me that the Arc de Triomphe was like basically right behind it and down the street, which is of course totally wrong. But I felt lied to, but at the same time it challenged my expectations and allowed me to just learn and grow from that experience. Like, you get some core information out of it that just pushes the envelope, so to speak. And I think that video games are very good at expanding our minds, as long as you understand that they're not always going to be completely accurate, which I think is a valuable lesson to learn from them as well, so that you don't always go in with the built-in expectations of a place and just assume they're always right. This is something I know from being from New Jersey. There's going to be a lot of stereotypes about Jersey. You live in Jersey. No one talks like that. It's an accent you never hear. But I've always said that I think it's kind of funny how everybody knows the stereotypes from where they live are wrong, yet believe all the stereotypes from every place they've never been to are correct. You know what I mean? Like, New York is nothing but gun violence. Chicago's a war zone. Everyone in Los Angeles is famous. You know what I mean? Yeah. And I think video games getting just kernels of that can challenge you to understand that those stereotypes are not always true. And that's all I'm trying to say, is that video games can be very educational and give you that kind of medical benefit.
No, absolutely. I mean, educational games are a whole other kind of ball of wax. That are proven to work. Like, you have everything from like those Leapfrog and VTech things for like little kids, all the way up to
You know what's hilarious? This is totally unrelated, but Leapfrog followed me on Twitter. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
Actually, a fun fact about Leapfrog, that company, I believe, was started by the former head of Sega of America, Tom Kalinske. After he left Sega, he went to Leapfrog. But anyway, one of my favorite like little weird things in a modern video game is something that Ubisoft does with their Assassin's Creed games. Recently, with Origins, Odyssey, and I think they just announced at E3 for Valhalla, they have something called Discovery Tour, which is kind of to what you were talking about, Twisted Metal, and like learning about geography or like bits of history, is an incredibly well-researched, basically open-world map that you could wander around in these like historical eras of Egypt and Greece, and you could like go see the pyramids or the Sphinx or the Lighthouse of Alexandria, and like it'll teach you about it, and you get to see what these things looked like, or at least what archaeologists believe they looked like back in antiquity. So like that's honestly one of my favorite modes in these Assassin's Creed games. I've spent so much time, and I know that Ubisoft specifically added those modes because history teachers who were video gamers said, wow, I love your games, and they're overall like they're very well researched in terms of their historical content, the Assassin's Creed games. And they said to Ubisoft, like, I wish we could like use these in the classroom to like get students engaged with history through video games. So that's why they added these tours. But just briefly, I do want to touch on something that you briefly mentioned, the physical aspect of the benefits of video games. You mentioned a couple, but Nintendo especially has been really, at least attempted to be at the forefront of innovation for like physical benefits of video games. You mentioned the Wii. The Wii was rife with those things. Wii Fit being the biggest one. A lot of people, I mean, it's one of the best-selling games on the system. And it's just like a balance board that you could do yoga or stretches on. And I don't think anybody ever lost weight with Wii Fit, but they've always kind of pushed that. I remember they were going to do a heart monitor for the Wii to like keep tabs on a player's pulse. That never released, but something that did release and is one of my absolute favorite like bits of weird Nintendo hardware is something called the Bayer Digit blood glucose monitor, which is a little accessory for the Nintendo DS that plugs in and is for people with diabetes to read their blood glucose readings. And that's actually a thing, and that's amazing. I think there's like a little game portion of it. It's like kind of like a chibi cartoon or something. I've never actually seen it, but it's funny that this thing actually exists. Like that really ties like the physical aspect of video games. And even today, Nintendo did the Ring Fit, which is kind of there for the Nintendo Switch. So that's always something that they've really pushed, the physical like side of video games. And for better or worse, like it's kind of been a thing for a while. I don't think the physical benefits are that great, but it's a nice thought. You know, motion controls aren't really appealing to me, but it's like I guess it's good to be able to want to get people off their butts and maybe being active for a video game.
Yeah, two things there. One, the Ubisoft thing, you're absolutely on point. I was actually in the room when they first announced that publicly because they did it at an event in San Francisco for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they straight up told us exactly that. They're like, you know, history teachers were like, we'd love to use this in classrooms, but it's a little violent to like teach anything. It's like I want to show them this thing, and all of a sudden I have like 30 guards running after me. It's kind of hard to make a point out of anything. So we dived into it and we decided, we can totally make this, and so that's why you got that. So secondly, there is actually a Fitbit released for the Wii U.
Oh, really?
Yes, it came with, I believe, Wii Fit U, which also used the bounce board thing or whatever. But yeah, that is a thing. But those are exceptions. You know, like you could really, like I said kind of earlier, you could throw that in with anything, like the activator for the Sega Genesis being a physical controller for Street Fighter or Mortal Kombat. Like technically, yes, you'll get exercise out of it, but let's not kid ourselves. People weren't really using it for that purpose. So in general, the vast majority of video games that you would have played, you're not getting much physical activity out of. Maybe some with the Kinect, sure, but in general, it's just not. That's not what people are doing, and that's fine. I really pin it more on mental benefits when in the medical context, which mental health is important. It's still not fundamentally really, really well understood, but we do understand that, certain things definitely improve your life and reduce your stress level, which we understand is important. So, As long as, but that's also one of those reasons, there are people who love to play video games on like the super hard difficulties. And I'm just like, I play a video game to like have fun, not to piss myself off. So I've never understood that. But then again, there are people who just love that challenge, people who that's the reward is they play the game on the hardest setting, they get through it. And I imagine the endorphin rush they get from that is in of itself mentally rewarding. So, my point is, in general, video games are typically very good for your mental health, unless you're playing just like the worst of the worst games, but that's a different situation.
I will say just one last point. I think in the coming decades, I think we're really going to start seeing for retirement homes, nursing homes, hospitals for the elderly. I think you're really going to start seeing the prevalence of video games in those settings. Just because the people that grew up with those as they get older and they become elderly and they enter these medical facilities, I think I'd love to see a clinical study or something like that about like the benefits of playing video games for like Alzheimer's patients, things like that. It's really kind of an untapped a field of therapy. They have music therapy, they have physical therapy. There's all these things that you could do to stimulate the mind. And video games could be an aspect of that, especially for people that grew up with those in their life. And I think we'll definitely see that as we go forward.
So basically what Rob is saying, when he and I are very old and we're in homes, and because we are the generation that grew up on video games, we'll be the generation that dies with video games. And the youth will just use us as like medical tools and oddities to study. We'll basically be old lab rats. That's the plan. I'm
just saying the millennials have killed so much. I think we're going to kill bingo and Parcheesi and shuffleboard.
We're going to have digital Parcheesi.
Digital Parcheesi, yeah.
Yeah, digital Chucky Parcheesi or whatever.
Anyway.
I don't know what the hell that even means. Anyway, so that's it for that. Thank you very much to Abdullah. We hope that everything works out for you soon, and we hope we see you next month, man.
Yes.
Moving on, we have a subject from Leafy Poo. As far as I understand, this will be Leafy Poo's last subject for a while, because he is dropping down to shoutouts, but technically he was still entitled to this, and he didn't give you a choice this time, Rob. He only had one thing he wanted to talk about.
By the way, I'm just going to say that I win. I won.
Ooh.
I won.
Wow.
I don't know what I don't know what we were fighting over or what, if we were fighting at all, but I won. I'm just going to say that.
Wow. Leafy Poo. Damn, you're just going to let him get away with that? All right.
Yeah.
He's not saying anything.
His silence speaks volumes.
Yeah. But anyway, so Leafy Poo, thank you very much for donating here. But okay, so the last subject he wanted to do for now anyway, he wanted to talk about, or have us talk about, underrated Game Boy Advance games. That was underrated Game Boy Advance games, for those who didn't hear over Rob sneezing or coughing into the microphone or whatever he just did. Hey, what's up? How you doing? Yeah, anyway, so for those who don't know, the Game Boy Advance was a handheld. No. So the thing was, the Game Boy Advance, I always felt was kind of weird, because I don't know if you remember this, but when it came out, it was really marketed, not directly, but kind of indirectly, as a PlayStation in your pocket. But it really wasn't. It was more like a Super Nintendo in your pocket, because just about everything on it was 16-bit era on like crack. It kind of felt like maybe what the 32X could have been, just if Nintendo had made it. I liked it. It was probably one of the ones I collected more for. But as you know, I'm not the biggest handheld guy. So like, I'm always, hey, I own a TV. Can I use that? And fortunately, in that case, Nintendo actually did. They gave you the Game Boy player for the GameCube.
Yeah.
So I remember picking up a bunch of stuff, and I don't know if I have any like hidden gems or underrated ones, but I will point out just how many games got released on it that people are like, I would assume, unaware of. Sega in particular released a bunch of stuff for that's just like exclusive stuff from some of their major IPs that we've never seen again. Like There's an Altered Beast game on there.
Mm-hmm.
There's Choo Choo Rocket, which is different from the Dreamcast version, obviously. Incidentally, that Choo Choo Rocket game was retooled and made into a game called Mighty Mighty Missile for the Sega CD. And it's actually very good. There was a Crazy Taxi game on there called Crazy Taxi Catch a Ride. There was
Guardian Heroes, a sequel to the Saturn game on there. You know,
there's also a Gunstar Heroes sequel.
Yes, there is. Yeah,
that's exclusive to the Game Boy Advance. There was a Revenge of Shinobi game. The Sega Arcade Gallery. There's an exclusive Sega Smash Pack compilation back when Sega was doing that. They had a Dreamcast edition and the Game Boy Advance edition with different. Well, I think Sonic 1 is on both of them. But they did exclusive Sonic stuff, so they had Sonic Advance 1, 2, and 3. Sonic Advance was also available on the N-Gage as Sonic N, but same game. I think everybody agrees the Game Boy Advance version was the better version.
Those are like the best 2D Sonic games until like Sonic Mania. Like after the Genesis era, like they're fantastic games.
Yeah, they're really the missing link as far as the 2D Sonic era. But like, if you were a casual fan of Sonic and you just kind of looked back at the entire legacy, you'd be like, after Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, there wasn't really a Sonic game until Sonic Mania. Well, the missing piece is the Sonic Advance trilogy on the Game Boy Advance. Yep. Sonic Battle, which was, if I remember correctly, some kind of fighting game, although I wasn't super into that one. Sonic Pinball Party, which was like the Sega or Sonic Spinball sequel, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. There was a Space Channel 5 game.
Yeah.
Ulala's Cosmic Attack that's exclusive to that. And there was Jet Grind Radio had an exclusive game
which is really good. It's like isometric view. Very cool.
So, and there was a Super Monkey Ball game on there as well, which I think that one is also on the N-Gage. And there's more, obviously not just from Sega, but like a lot of developers took that console very seriously. Not surprisingly, Nintendo put a lot of great stuff on there. Actually, to tell you the truth, I remember kind of making fun of Nintendo at the time because what Sega was doing with Nintendo hardware was giving you new Sonic games, like Sonic Advance we were just talking about. Meanwhile, Nintendo is making Mario games, but they're just re-releasing their SNES games and NES games as game. Super Mario Advance 1, 2, and 3, and 4. And I'm like, I remember these like 10 years prior. It was very odd. It felt more like a Sega handheld in some ways than it did a Nintendo one. But I would say if there's any sort of harmonious marriage between those two companies really trying to make one platform together, it would be the Game Boy Advance. Just because of how much content is legitimately good from both of them. There's a really good Mario Kart game on there. You also had a lot of other developers, like SNK put out a bunch of King of Fighters games. You have some good fighting stuff. It kind of had a little of everything. And even for the RPG guys, I know there was like, what was it, the Golden Sun games,
Fire Emblem, got its start, in America on there, yeah.
Sure, and obviously all that Pokemon stuff.
Yeah.
And then there's also the GOAT, not referring to Franklin the Turtle. I don't know if there is
a Franklin the Turtle game on there.
Whoa! Holy shit!
There is.
Then yes, it definitely is the GOAT. That wasn't the one I was going to talk about. Now,
I looked that up specifically.
Right, I'm glad you did, because now what I have to say is just useless, because Barbie Island Princess and Strawberry Shortcake Summertime Adventure just can't compete with Franklin the Turtle.
Nope.
But yeah, so there's a version of Simpsons Road Rage on there?
There is, yeah. It's terrible. I had it as a kid, yeah.
Right, so that's another weird thing about that platform is I would argue that the 6th generation is that, or the 4th, depends on the day you ask me, is the greatest console generation of all time. In the Game Boy Advance, you kind of had this weird fusion because it was essentially 4th gen technology, which allowed for so many, SNES and Genesis re-releases to fit so seamlessly. But you had the, let's say, the creative energy of the 6th generation. So you were getting... While you were getting a game for a 6th gen console like an Xbox, a GameCube, a PS2, or a Dreamcast, there were a lot of times would be a version of that game for this. And like that's kind of weird in hindsight, but it's debatably, if this had been a home console instead of a handheld, I think you could actually make a case that it was like the greatest console ever made. But because it's a handheld, it can't even really enter that discussion. It can maybe make a case for greatest handheld of all time, especially when you include backwards compatibility. I think that the Game Boy Advance is... I would actually put it up there. I might actually say that is the greatest handheld.
I absolutely
from
agree.
It's the
best handheld ever made.
From a game perspective. I was never a fan of the way Nintendo themselves handled it. And what I mean by that is... So there's so many different versions of that platform, right? There's the original like launch model that I'm sure the one that looks the most like a traditional Game Boy. Then they had the Micro and they had the SP. There was always just some design flaw with it. Either there wasn't a backlit screen, or the screen itself wasn't good, or it's using a flip-top design, or it's not backwards compatible. Like every single one of them has some sort of Achilles heel. The best thing you can do, though, is get the original OEM GBA and then put in like a modern screen on it.
Yeah,
and
it's telling you IPS screen. Yeah,
right, and that is just like the best thing you've ever done in your life.
Yeah,
if you do that, it's incredible. I have one. It's absolutely fantastic. It's the only thing it's missing is TV out. But then again, if you have a GameCube and the Game Boy player, you pretty much have the same option right there. So
yep.
It's weird actually. Like part of me wants a consoleized Game Boy Advance. Even
they do make them.
I know,
yeah.
And that's all I'm saying is it doesn't make any sense. Like I can do that on a GameCube, but somehow I feel like I would actually enjoy it more if it was its own standalone thing, as opposed to a bonus feature, which is what it was. But I don't know if that really answers Leafy Poo's question per se, but can you think of anything else?
Yes. Okay. Now that you're shutting up, like let me talk some fucking hidden gems. Okay, so I could talk literally forever about this system. I absolutely fucking adore it. I think it's really the best handheld Nintendo's ever made. During this time of like 3D gaming, you got like in the 6th gen, as Adam was talking about, it was really... You got no 2D games, Franklin the Turtle aside. You rarely got any traditional 2D games. Everything was kind of moving into 3D. The GBA was really just the bastion of traditional 2D gaming. And it is so great for it because it's really just an extension of the excellent 2D sprite work and gameplay that was developed and expanded on in the 16 and 32-bit eras. So the games that are on there that are 2D are really some of the pinnacle of game design. Okay, so hidden gems. Let's talk. So, okay, I've got a bunch of them. So, like, Adam gave me this topic before, and I had to, like, go through my collection and find, like, some ones that, some people don't talk about. Okay, Klonoa got a game on the Game Boy Advance. It's called Empire of Dreams. Traditional 2D platformer. Is amazing. All the Klonoa games are great, but that one's really fantastic. Drill Dozer. If you know the developer Game Freak, they're behind the Pokemon games. They made this awesome 2D kind of puzzle platformer that actually has a rumble pack built into the cartridge, and you're like this guy, and you're like in this like cart that has this like drill on the front that you use for combat or like traversing the environment. So awesome. One of the best games on the system that nobody fucking talks about, and I don't know why, is a game by Treasure, the developer behind Ikaruga, Sin and Punishment, McDonald's Treasureland Adventures.
Thank you for saying that.
Is called Astro Boy: The Omega Factor. Adam, I know you're not an anime guy. I am not an anime guy either. This game is fucking amazing. It's like... the sprite work is incredible. The music is amazing. It's like this kind of like a Mega Man game. It has some like shoot 'em up elements to it. It's so fucking good. It's amazing. Ninja 5.0, which is extremely expensive. So if you want to play this game, either emulate it or get like a repro cart. It's made by Hudson Soft. Is like a love letter to those old 2D games on like the NES, like Ninja Gaiden and Bionic Commando. Yeah, it's like a spiritual successor to that. Fuck yeah, I could just keep talking. All of the Sega stuff, as Adam said, the Sonic Advance games are amazing. They introduced some of the elements to 2D Sonic that were in like the 3D games, like rail grinding, and I think some of them even have the homing attack, and you could switch to different characters like Knuckles. Yeah, god damn it. Lady Sia, that's like, it's amazing, like sprite work. It's like this 2D kind of like beat 'em up platformer, kind of like the Wonder Boy games. Yeah, I could literally talk forever about the Game Boy Advance, so I will stop it there. So yeah, look into it. The system is amazing for 2D games in an era where you weren't getting them. It's one of the best consoles ever made, and yes, I love it dearly.
All right, I think that about says it right there. So thank you very much, Leafy Poo, for that subject.
Finally, a subject I liked. Thanks, Leafy.
Yeah, he's going out with a gift there. Yeah, so no, he's still sticking around. He's just lowering down to shout outs, but hopefully one day he'll be back. Because actually, to be honest, I always loved when he gave you a choice and it was like two ridiculous things. That was a good time. We didn't know what we had. We didn't know what we had. We got to play that song by Green Day. The "Hope You Had the Time of Your Life" song, the most overplayed song ever.
Good riddance. Yeah,
whatever it's called. That one. You got to play that in your mind. I'm playing that right now for you, Leafy Poo. Anyway, so we'll move on to the next subject here. This is just one, just kind of that we just saw, and I just thought it was kind of interesting. So, politics aside, we're not talking about politics here, I promise. But the United States is getting out of the Afghanistan. It's been like 20 years. And the only reason we're bringing this up is I saw this interesting article that just kind of I never thought about, because I've only been on one U.S. military base, and that was the one in Yokosuka. And I can tell you from just that one experience, when you cross the border, you truly are on U.S. soil. Like, they do everything to make it feel as American as possible. Every American fast food chain is there. Like, the power outlets are suddenly the way you're used to. USD is the currency of choice. There's a USPS on site. You get it. It's just like little mini America town. So, obviously, they did this in Afghanistan. They built bases like that. And I guess while they were doing that, and Pokemon Go was at its height, they had a whole bunch of exclusive Pokemon that are available because it's U.S. soil that are just available on the base. And so you'll have to correct me on this, Rob, because I'm not familiar with the game. I know you are, but as they're pulling out, I guess all those Pokemon are going to remain like hidden on the base or something.
So Pokemon Go, like, I haven't really played it since that, like, month that it was, like, the biggest thing in the fucking universe, and, like, all the millennials and Gen Xers, like, Gen Zers, rather, like, went outside and played video games instead of staying inside.
Before a pandemic hit, yeah.
Yeah. Well, this was, like, 2016, I think. Yeah.
No, it wasn't that long ago.
Yes, it was.
Was it? Jesus, we're old.
Yeah.
That's like 2 presidents ago. All right.
Yeah. I thought we were not getting into politics. Anyway,
that's not politics. That's history.
Anyway, so Pokemon Go. I believe there's the two things are there's Pokemon that are roaming around, and I don't think it matters where you are. Like specifically in any location, like different continents, different countries, different areas have different Pokemon that you can capture. So it's an incentive to kind of go out and travel to different areas to catch them all, as it would. The other thing is gyms, which are like these little landmarks that you could go visit like all over your town. Like I remember the town that I lived in at the time had like Pokemon gyms that everybody kind of congregated around, and it was like basically a place where you could battle and you could take control of that gym. So apparently, according to the Eurogamer article that I read about this news story, apparently the Bagram Air Force Base in Afghanistan has Pokemon gyms there. So presumably, if the local population in and around the base after they pull out, if they've gotten into the Pokemon game as well, because it is even though it's gone down in popularity since its peak, however many years ago, it is still very popular and a lot of people still play it. my sister included. So I think that if it did rub off on that local population, and if there are kids or adults that still play the game, that might be kind of a popular congregating point if you're playing the game outside. There's also the something you could do where I actually asked my sister about it specifically since she still plays it, is you could like hack the game so you could make it believe that you're in a different place when you're not. You could be sitting in your living room in New Jersey and pretend to be in Afghanistan, or trick your phone or your app into being there. Maybe using a VPN or something. I don't know. So I think with this article says, and like the knowledge that there's like a Pokemon gym in Afghanistan, I think a lot of people are going to kind of trick their app into believing that they're actually at Afghanistan to go to this Pokemon gym, because now it's kind of highly publicized and an interesting little footnote. But yeah, it's interesting story.
I only have one Pokemon Go story because I'm very much not into Pokemon. It's essentially antithetical to like everything I like. But I will say this. So a couple of years ago, I was out in, of all places, I was in Saipan, which is a tiny island. It's an American island, which is key, just north of Guam, which is like 3 hours south of Japan. But anyway, so I'm out there. And I head over to this like museum about like the history of Saipan, which is on an American national park. And so as I'm standing there like outside, I see a whole bunch of like local kids come up, and it's just my like first mental image is like, I wonder what they do all day for entertainment, because it's a small island. There's not really much to do. Like, what do you do? Because the downtown area is kind of tiny and everything else is largely underdeveloped, and they make a big deal about how they have one McDonald's now. Like, what do you do on an afternoon, right? And out of nowhere, like, one of the kids goes, oh, there's and he says like a Charizard or something, I don't know the name. He says like, there's something out there, and then like all the kids go running out in the park. I'm like, yes, okay, they're Americans. They're doing exactly what Americans would be doing at home here. It makes no difference. They're just out playing Pokemon Go in a field. Okay, never mind. This feels so America, and it was an oddly patriotic moment.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my only story about Pokemon Go.
And by the way, I did look it up, and apparently the game is celebrating its 5th anniversary this summer. So 2016 it came out.
Well then. I got nothing. Okay, so, all right. Thank you for, well, I guess nobody for that one. I came up with that one. So let's just move on.
Hey, thanks a lot, nobody.
Yeah. Thanks to that nobody who didn't sponsor that. All right. So next up, we have a round of shout-outs. So the following people are all Patreon backers, and they are at the level in which they get a shout-out. You can sign up for any time to get this. You can also pick subjects. You can be on the podcast, or you can just support and get early access to this and all the other videos that come out of the channel. So thank you to the following people: Amy Girl, Joseph Tamburino, Julian Espinoza, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner. Once again, that's Amy Girl, Joseph Tamburino, Julian Espinoza, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner. Thank you very much. We've got Keith back with us now. What's up, man?
Hey, it's good to be back, as usual.
And as always, it's lovely to have you here. Unfortunately, because Abdullah was unable to make the first half, you're our only guest today, so we appreciate you being able to be here.
I feel sad for anybody who does tune in just for him. But I will do my best. Not as technically knowledgeable as him, but I'll try to be entertaining as best I can.
I tune in
basically
just for
the Abdullah podcast. Yeah, me too. I was going to say, this is basically Abdullah's podcast.
When I watch, usually. Well, no offense. I know what I say, and so usually I kind of skip to his parts when I listen to it myself.
And I don't blame you. I only listen to Abdullah, and I have to edit this, so I mostly edit us out, and I just keep Abdullah in there. It's the best part of the show.
So we miss you, buddy. We miss you.
We do. But anyway, so Keith, we do have you with us, and we appreciate that. So you had a subject in mind, and I'm just going to say what I think you were basically getting at, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you sounded like you just wanted to have us each tell the story of like the first time we ever played a video game console. Is that correct?
Well, it's roughly that. It's actually like, in particular, one standouts in your life that when you played it, you were like, this is just okay. this is the game. This is what I'm doing. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
Like, it's the first time you played this, or first time you played that. Like, a lot of people played a lot of consoles, but they didn't really start getting into games until they played a certain console, you know? Things like that. So
I absolutely have a story for that, but I'll let... Do you want to go first?
Absolutely. I actually got two, so I'll just do my first one real quick. My first one is about the first time I ever witnessed and experienced the Sega Genesis. It was an amazing time in my life. I was about 6 years old, and it was my brother's birthday. But my mom got it on a sale, so it was everyone's going to get it for their birthday this year. Even though it was my brother's birthday, everyone's going to get it as a big present. My mom did that a lot for us back in the day. But so once we got our hands on, once we opened up the box, we saw it there, big old letters, Sega Genesis with the Altered Beast pack-in game. We got Altered Beast, Joe Montana talking football, and Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. A pretty good, almost tech demo for us. So the only thing I've played prior to that has been NES. And by NES, I mean pretty, you know, if you guys remember a couple episodes back, some of my NES collection happens to be a lot of LJN games and Data East games and a lot of licensed games. So it was really nice to get my hands on something different. So that's all I've ever played before so get that in your mind. All I've ever played before is like NES, LJN games. Maybe the best game I've ever played is probably Super Mario Brothers 3, most likely. And so now I get my hands on Sega Genesis. We pop in Altered Beast, and oh my god, I lost my mind the first time I saw this. The sprites were huge, the colors, the sound, and when I first heard that, rise from your graves, I swear to God, I got chills. I was 6 years old, and I got chills. It had 3 buttons on it. That was good for me. The controller felt amazing in my hand, and it just took me off in a love affair of Sega Genesis. After that, I got to play Joe Montana's Talking Football, which showed to me what speech in a game could really do. I was floored when I first heard that speech. I mean, granted, I didn't really like the game too much. I'm not a huge fan of sports games, but oh my God, the first time I heard those words come out of a console, it was amazing to be. I mean, they're robotic nowadays, but back in the day, it was everything. And then, of course, I got to Castle of Illusion starring Mickey Mouse. My all-time favorite Sega Genesis game. From start to finish, I probably beat that game when I first got it within a week or so. I mean, I was a little kid. I loved that game, and it definitely set me off with a love affair of Sega Genesis. I definitely really got into the hype, too, of Genesis does what Nintendo don't, and I definitely became an ardent and heavy Genesis fan. I became a little adamant at the school tables, that Genesis was everything. But this was before the Super Nintendo came out, so Genesis was everything back then. So that's kind of my story with my first story with the Genesis that was, and the Sega Genesis was just amazing. I mean, it was 16 bits of loveliness.
That last game, that was the right choice. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man, you know what you're doing, man. You're jumping. You know how to kill enemies, man.
Yeah,
You jump on them. You jump on them with your ass like a freaking man.
I was the best. I can take anything up my ass and kill it. Not a problem.
Oh, that's what I like to hear.
Yeah. Anyway, your check's in the mail. Thanks for saying that. We're not recording, right? Like this isn't live.
No. Of course not. We're fine.
No. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Go to Disneyland.
Not my best, but I'm in there.
No, it's good you got in there really well.
Yeah.
I really want to tell a story about, how it amazed me going from 8-bit to 16-bit. Just the huge leap in sound and graphics I got. It was just so huge.
Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that's what the story was mainly about. Was that leap
I thought you had like a
graphics.
second part to it.
No, I actually have a second console I want to talk about later.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay, that's what I mean. Go for it.
Oh yeah. You talking about the second console?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. No, the second console when I first saw it is it has become a fan favorite of my fans. Is my Jaguar. The Jaguar. I actually did not own one for a very long time. I actually got to go over to my buddy. His name is Wayne. He was kind of the weird kid. He was super, super into the Aliens movies, like hardcore into them, like way too much. But
is it because they were Wayland Industries?
I have no idea. It could be. But he was super.
It's not
super
Wayne Industries. That's Batman. But Wayland's pretty close.
Oh yeah, no kidding. Yeah, he was a kid just like me with a single mom, and so apparently the mom had some money because he had a freaking Jaguar day one with well, not day one, but as soon as whichever one he had a Alien versus Predator, obviously, and that's the only game I ever saw in the Atari Jaguar for the longest time. And so with that being my main impression of the Jaguar, I thought the Jaguar was the future of gaming, the absolute future of gaming, because at this time my most advanced system was, you know, my Sega Genesis and my Super Nintendo. So definitely, when I first saw the Jaguar, I bought into the hype hardcore just on that game alone because the graphics were so good at the time. It just blew me away. The realistic aspect of it, the exploring aspect to it, the fact you could play different characters. I really enjoyed it, and honestly, I did really enjoy the inserts for the different buttons when I first saw them. I thought that was really innovative. It really got me when I was a kid. I was like, this is genius. I don't know idea why anybody don't do this. You know, put the inserts in here, it tells you exactly what everything does. This is genius. I mean, Atari, they're going to take over the world. That's what I thought back then anyways.
Actually, I've given credit to that before. The whole keypad thing is actually a really good idea. It's just really poorly misunderstood.
Yeah. I always liked the keypad on the older consoles, but I didn't, the ones that didn't have guides for them, I didn't like.
Yeah, and that makes sense. But that's the part people don't get, is that you were supposed to insert this little like piece of paper that came with the game into the controller, and it would like tell you what all the buttons were associated with. So you would have, example, like Alien versus Predator, rather than having to cycle through your weapons, that thing would just take you straight to your weapon of choice.
Yep.
Like, it was actually a really good idea. It's just one of those things in practice doesn't work because kids don't care enough to do that. You know?
Yeah, the worst is kids don't care enough to keep those things around.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So if I'm now interpreting your question, it's not so much what was the first video game you played and was there a story. It's like the video game moments that shaped you. It sounds more like what it is.
Yeah, it's more like your first impressions of console. How did it hit you? You know what I mean?
All right.
Like how did a certain console or whatnot hit you?
What were those big moments that impacted you? Do you want to go, Rob?
Sure. So I've got a couple.
Are you still there, Rob?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hold on. The credit card's still going through. Hold on. Okay, we're good. DLC.
Oh yeah, no. Keith's payment went through, so Rob stays. Okay, good. All right, good.
So I've got a couple. The one that like sticks out to me the most is the first time seeing an N64 in action. I never had a Nintendo console growing up. The first one I had was the N64. I was a Sega kid before that. And I remember going over to my friend Ty's house, who's like a childhood friend, and he had gotten the N64 for his birthday or Hanukkah or something like that. And I was like, oh, I mean, like, there's no way it could look better than, you know, the Sega Genesis. Sega Genesis, that's 16 bits right there, man. It's like, and he put on Super Mario 64, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, it's like that scene in Wizard of Oz where everything is black and white, and, like, steps out of the house in Oz and everything's in Technicolor. It was like that drastic a difference because, you know, I had never really played any PC games before then, so I had never really seen like what 3D games would look like. And although it might seem crude now, it's like that jump to 3D with the Nintendo 64 and specifically Mario 64 being able to run in any direction was mind-blowing to me. And it still gets me, like, and I remember, like, after that, just, like, asking my parents, like, every day for a Nintendo 64, and I ended up getting one, I think, the year after it came out. But,
you were super excited about that, right? I remember seeing a video. Nintendo 64!
Yeah. I remember, it was, the thing that was amazing, it was at my birthday party, and we're having it at Fuddruckers, like that really shitty burger chain. And
or as Idiocracy told us, butt fuckers.
Yeah. So they
you must have seen Idiocracy.
Yes.
Oh my god, that movie's Gatorade, man.
Yeah. Anyway,
it's got electrolytes.
It's what plants crave, yo. All right,
go ahead, Rob.
So I remember they had an arcade there, and I remember playing one of my favorite arcade games around that time was Cruisin' USA, like the racing game. And like they called us to like our table like for like to blow out the candles, and my parents gave me like the present with the N64 in it. And they gave me Cruisin' USA was on the Nintendo 64, and I'm like, holy shit, I could bring this fucking arcade game home? That's fucking amazing. Like, yeah, except not with as much profanity. So yeah, I have like a lot of
fun to watch little Rob just screaming out the F-bombs at Chuck E. Cheese.
It's like, fuck, imagine. Yeah, it's like all the parents are like, yeah, he's not coming to my kid's party. Yeah.
I imagine it actually more like it looks like the scene from A Christmas Story where it's having slow motion, where he opens it up and just fudge, yes, cruising.
Yeah, basically.
Only I didn't say fudge.
But it's funny, like, I was thinking of, like, these most memorable moments that I have. And ironically, there's, like, this one that I was thinking of recently, because, like, Nintendo doesn't do stuff like this anymore. Back in, like, 2006, before the Wii came out, I was obsessed with it. Like, it was coming off the heels of the GameCube, my favorite video game console of all time. So I was hyped for the Wii, as I'm sure you guys were. It's like everybody, like, before they played it, it was like, the Wii's going to be the best fucking thing ever. It's going to change gaming, you know. Motion controls.
It was the Phantom Menace of,
yes.
Video games.
Exactly.
I feel like this segment, by the way, needs to just be, let's interrupt Rob with random movie references that have nothing to do with his story. Sorry, Rob.
So I really wanted to play the Wii, and I couldn't, like, I didn't go to E3, when it was first, like, unveiled and playable for the first time. So I'm like, I still want to play the Wii. So the summer of 2006, 4 months before it came out, Nintendo used to do this concert tour called the Nintendo Fusion Tour, where they would sponsor like these concerts like across the country, and they would bring out all these kind of popular bands. At the time it was mostly like emo bands, which I fucking despise. I hate emo. But and so they set up this tour in 2006, and the big fucking thing that they're doing is live demos of the Wii. Like, if you go to the Fusion Tour, you can like play the Wii before it came out. And I'm like, I go to my best friend Andrew, and I'm like, Andrew, they've got the Wii at this concert. We gotta fucking go. And I think we paid like probably $100 for these tickets to go see this fucking Nintendo Fusion Tour in New York City. And I remember playing the Wii, and I played. I think I played a little Wii Sports, and I played Excite Truck, and I thought it was fucking amazing. I mean, it's always that like that honeymoon period that people had with the Wii, like that first couple times playing it, it's like, oh my god, if I move it, it moves, like that thing, and that's what it kind of was like. And I remember like camping out for the Wii in front of the Nintendo World Store in New York like the night before it came out. And yeah, it's like I was so drawn in by the hype. I think we were talking last month about like hype in the video game industry. I was so fucking hyped for the Wii. And I don't hate it as much as Adam does, but it's like, yeah, the honeymoon period was pretty fucking over quickly with the Wii. I think I ended up selling mine like 2 years into it, but I still remember like paying $100 just to fucking see the damn thing and just to play it for 5 minutes. Like, it's funny looking back on that, like how your view on things has changed over time.
So I'll tell mine here, but I want to tell a little side story that's kind of similar to what you were just talking about. When the Switch was coming out, so it came out in 2017, March, right? Nintendo decided to do some press events in, I think it was the fall of 2016. They went to select cities, and they did this thing where you could go, they would rent out a space, and you could go and play it. But they did it only in, I think it was 3 cities. New York, Chicago, and oddly San Francisco, not Los Angeles. Which, aside from San Francisco, that makes sense. It's the 3 largest cities, but it should have been Los Angeles instead of San Francisco. So I obviously didn't do the one in New York. Chicago, I tried to do it. I was like, okay, that makes sense. I live here. I looked at the address. It wasn't that far, actually. So I was like, I'm going to go try this out. Now, in typical Nintendo fashion, they publicly said, like, come one, come all, everybody check it out. You'll be able to get in. It'll be a whole day. It's a public thing, whatever. Once you get there, you realize they mean by that, like, oh, you had to line up at 2 in the morning and it's only like the first 50 people. And we don't tell you that until it opens at noon. Everybody go fuck yourselves. So it was a huge mistake on their part, but like I didn't get to check it out on that basis. But I will not forget that there was this family in line like right behind me with one kid who I kind of put myself in your shoes or whatever, or put him in your shoes basically, where he was just like super excited to play it and he didn't get to because of Nintendo's fuckery. But then they're looking into the tour and, you know, they ask the guy like, well, is there another chance to play it? And the guy responds, yeah, in San Francisco. And so this kid's like telling his dad, we need to go to San Francisco. And the dad's, but no, you laugh. And I would too. The dad starts like being like, okay, I'll call like the ticket agent. And they start like talking about like, all right, we'll fly the family to San Francisco. I'm like, where was, you know, my mom didn't do that shit for me. Good for this kid. But like, you know, hopefully he got to play it, and hopefully it wasn't that big of a disappointment. But you know, whatever. But I think it is funny. Like every kid has some sort of moment like that, and I got to, in a sense, witness this kid's weird moment with it. Even though I myself didn't get to play the Switch right away, and as it turns out, that wouldn't really be that big of a deal because the Switch is fine, but it's not. I maybe it's because we're older. I don't know. I've never been like super impressed by the Switch. I've just kind of enjoyed it like anything else, but that's not the point of this. So the point is our stories. And when you hear this, you're probably going to wonder how I didn't end up a Nintendo kid and ended up more of a Sega kid. But my first experience with a video game ever was very limited. You know, I remember in the very late 80s, it must have been 89, 90, something like that. A bunch of my cousins randomly came over to my house, and you know, at that point I would have been like 3 or 4 years old, and they all go into the basement and they take out the NES and they're just playing the NES and they're like super excited and they're playing Paperboy, right? Paperboy was the first video game I ever saw in any context.
Wow, wait,
and I was
that's insane, because that is the first actual arcade game I actually played in my life, was Paperboy.
There you go.
That just seems weird. I have no idea why.
No,
That's the first game I ever played in an arcade.
It has to do with being around the same age.
Yeah, I guess so.
But anyway, so I'm seeing them play this game with really no grasp of what I'm even seeing. So I didn't play it. You know, they didn't ask me to play it. I didn't really understand it. I just kind of saw it. Now, fast forward maybe like a year or two. It must have been probably like Thanksgiving of 1991. I think the Super Nintendo had just come out. And I was at my cousin's house, and they had picked up a Super Nintendo, and they had Super Mario World. And that was the first video game I ever got to play. I remember playing, it's basically that first level of Super Mario World where, you know, you run in and there's a turtle shell, there's a whole bunch of turtles there, Koopas, whatever, and you know, run to the end of the level, basically. I died immediately on the first turtle. I never could get past it. Like, it was just, but I was like, this is blowing
even to
my
this
mind.
day, Adam can't get past that first
turtle. To this day, despite being able to beat that entire game, I can actually beat like that whole game in just a matter of hours. And when I say whole game, I mean not speed running, not like rushing to the end. I mean every single level.
That's why I prefer to play it too. I like it that way.
Yeah. But anyway, so I played that. I was terrible at it, but it blew my mind. The idea that, like, wait a minute, I was just pressing some plastic stuff and the screen was reacting to me doing that. That's messing with my mind. And so naturally that started me on the I want a video game thing. And, you know, I've told stories about that before, but basically I didn't get a Genesis till like, you know, 2 years after that, whatever. But I remember the whole 16-bit era where we were all like arguing what's better, Super Nintendo, Genesis, blah, 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 blah. But just like you, Rob, when the Nintendo 64 came out, you know, I had that wow moment. And mine wasn't even as big of a leap because I've told you before, like I had a friend who had a 32X. So I had gotten used to seeing things like Virtua Racer and Virtua Fighting. And those didn't blow my mind. It just seemed like, oh, that's what 32-bit is. It says it on there. It's 32X. Sure, that's double. What do I know? You know what I mean? So it never blew my mind. But then a friend of mine had got the N64 and he played Super Mario World. And I was like, this is something different. This is something special. This is absolutely crazy. So that absolutely blew my mind. And the last time that I ever experienced anything like that was in 1998 when they started really gearing up all of the Dreamcast stuff, more so in 99. And they basically started showing, like there was this VHS tape that was randomly mailed to a bunch of people, and one of my friends got it. It was called Fuse. It was so ahead of its time because it was basically YouTube video game journalism, 16 years before YouTube was even a thing. And I still have that tape to this day, and they just showed tons and tons of footage of this thing called the Dreamcast. And I remember being like, wow. Like, holy shit. And then eventually, you started seeing it pop up in places. You could play it at kiosks and all that. And that was the last time where I was genuinely, just blown away. Because by the time after that, you start getting older and it doesn't have the same effect on you anymore. But also diminishing returns, as you guys are fully aware. You don't have that whole, console wars, bit wars thing. Now it's just about is it in 4K or not? You know what I mean? So it's not really the same. But then again, I don't know. We're not kids. Like if we were to find that kid who was super excited about the Switch and he's going to San Francisco to play it, whatever, when the next iterate, did he see an Xbox Series X and think oh my god, this is so much better than the Xbox One? I don't know. We don't have that perspective and we never will. But yeah, those are basically my core moments that kind of blew my mind. And like I said, it's kind of ironic I ended up being more of a Sega kid, but I did.
Wow. Yeah, actually, talking about the youth, my nephew is 11 years old, and honestly, with the games he plays, with mainly Fortnite, he doesn't care what console he plays on. He doesn't care if he's playing on a tablet or a console or what all. It doesn't matter to him in any way whatsoever. So he has a Switch, and he's happy with that. I've actually noticed that about with a lot of younger kids, they mostly just have Switches, and they're perfectly happy with that, from what I've seen.
Yeah.
So I'm not seeing too much of a, oh, do you have an Xbox? Do you have a PlayStation? I'm not seeing too much of that like when I was in high school and stuff like that, when we were yelling Xbox versus PlayStation all day. I mean, we still had those fights. I did anyways.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's actually an interesting point to bring to the audience. So anybody listening out there, I know a lot of you guys have kids. You obviously pay attention to video games because you're listening to this. Yeah. I'm curious, do your kids still get in debates? If that's something you could find out, do they get in debates about this anymore? Is that a thing, or are they just no, dude, we just care about the game. We'll debate Minecraft versus Fortnite. We don't debate Switch versus Xbox or whatever. I'm curious if
does hardware
that's
matter
changed
anymore.
Yeah, does hardware matter? That's another subject for another time, definitely. Which maybe we'll do. We just need more information. True. So you guys tell us.
Yep.
All right, so Keith, I think that was a good subject,
absolutely,
but I think we're ready to move on, unless there's anything else anybody wants to say on this. Nope.
I'll
take that as a no.
No, I'm good.
All right. So our next subject is probably going to be kind of a brief one, but we were talking about the Switch, and it all makes sense. Yesterday, at the time we record this, Nintendo finally revealed the big-ass 4K Ultra Super HD Nintendo Switch Pro Omega Hyper Edition, which is really just a Switch with an OLED screen.
Switch Plus.
I assume you guys saw this?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know everything. Okay. Yeah.
All right, so to be fair, it comes with a new dock, which I guess has a broadband port in it, and you can buy the dock separately, by the way, because people were wondering if you could do that. It will work with the old Switch. You don't have to buy the new one. So I've kind of two thoughts on this. One, I don't really care. People have been bitching about a Switch Pro for the longest time. And I don't entirely understand why, because it's not really Nintendo's nature to do that concept. with the exception of like the new 3DS, which is like the one time they ever did it. It's not really in Nintendo's nature to make like mid-generational hardware updates. And the thing with this is you have to temper your expectations, because of course when fans are out there constantly saying there's rumors of a Switch Pro and it will have 4K and it will also have 60 FPS, sometimes 120 FPS, it can also run every Nintendo game ever made, plus it grants wishes. Like, when you set these ridiculous high bars, of course when Nintendo's like, hey, it's just got a better screen, of course you're going to be disappointed. And that's in of itself a different subject. Like, are communities kind of like self-destroying their own goals by overhyping things that can never be that way?
We talked about that last month. Like,
there
where
you go.
It's just like hype culture, just like destroying expectations for video games and consoles. Yeah,
precisely. Now, is this a perfect example of that then?
Yes. It is, because Nintendo, like, there were leaks for... I mean, people have been talking about this shit for, like, 2 years now. Like, since the Switch was, like, 2 years old, they're like, there's going to be a Switch Pro, you fucking know it. And there's all these fucking renders online and clickbait articles and fucking clickbait YouTube videos, like, Switch Pro confirmed! Like, patents and fucking things and, like, shipments from, like, the chip maker. I'm like... I even think we talked about the Switch Pro, and I'm like... Yeah, it's probably like it might come out, but it's not going to be what you think it is. Like, and but it's you know what? It was exactly what I thought it was going to be. Like the rumors leading into it kind of spelled out exactly what this thing was going to be. Like, Nintendo wasn't ordering new chipsets, graphics cards, things like that. They basically ordered a slightly bigger screen that has not even a higher resolution. The thing's still running in 720p in handheld mode, but it's a little bit bigger, and it's an OLED screen, which, to be fair, anybody who's played a PlayStation Vita knows how good the OLED screen on that thing looks. So I'm sure it's going to look fantastic. They upped the battery life a little bit, to, I think, 4 to 9 hours instead of 3 to 7. They upgraded the storage from 32 gigs of flash to 64 gigs. And then they made the new dock. And that's it. And, I mean, this thing is really... The only reason you're going to get this, like, as a consumer, is either you buy everything that Nintendo releases, like sight unseen, you play almost exclusively in handheld mode, because that's what this thing is. It's more of a handheld upgrade. This thing isn't getting a higher resolution when docked or whatever. It has a bigger screen and a nicer screen and more portable storage. So if you're a guy like me who travels a lot or plays their Switch portably a lot, you know what? It might be a nice upgrade for you. Or the third person would be, if you're really into Nintendo's online infrastructure, playing stuff like Splatoon and Smash and Mario Kart, all that stuff. The fact that it has a built-in Ethernet port is nice, but it's also something that has been remedied already by companies that have created USB to Ethernet dongles that plug right into your Switch dock and allow it to be played through Ethernet. So even that, it's not a revolutionary thing. So is it cool? I think the price point makes sense for it. Having the slightly bigger screen and the nicer dock. Yeah, $350, I think that's a good price. I don't think it's going to sell terribly well. I think scalpers are going to try and make it sell well and try and scalp the thing for $1,000 because they're pieces of shit. But I don't think this thing is the monumental Switch mid-generation upgrade that everybody was so hyped for. And bottom line, don't get too crazy with your predictions. Temper your expectations, and yeah.
Yeah, I gotta agree with Rob on that one. I do think that scalpers are gonna make a massive play for them right at the beginning, because it is new, it is Nintendo, and the overhype of the Pro model just really, really ruined what Nintendo was trying to do with this. which was just fine-tune the Switch, is what Nintendo's actually always done with a lot of their stuff, with the Wii, with a couple of other things. They just like to fine-tune their product. They don't really like to upgrade, except for upgrading generations, you know? That's all.
Yeah, I agree completely. Again, this is just a victim of fans destroying it for themselves.
And YouTubers without content, you know?
It's Adam's fault.
Hey,
all Adam's fault.
You know full well that I do not do that type of video. I fundamentally disagree with the whole concept of, hey guys, I heard a rumor through my friend Bill who totally works at Nintendo, trust me. Anyway, or unnamed sources are reporting that Nintendo is full in on an 8K machine. I hate that shit, and you know that.
Yes.
So it drives me nuts, and then people believe it because they're just kind of casually looking at it. Then they see this, and they're like, dude, what the fuck? Yeah. Nintendo sucks. They didn't give me the 8Ks.
Yeah.
What's an 8K? Do you even know? Anyway, also, I hate that.
Also, we do have to blame PlayStation and Xbox for kind of getting us used to the whole extra, platforms. Xbox One S, X. PlayStation 4 Pro. They kind of got the gaming culture kind of into those extra models. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm just saying that definitely did not contribute at all, because as soon as that started happening, as soon as the Switch came out, people started talking, like you said, people started talking about Pro model. I was like, would this even have existed in the other generations? People talk about this stuff as soon as the Switch came out? No, but nowadays the culture's just changed so much to because I guess technology's changed so much to the point they got to have the latest resolution on at all times. And instead of getting us a new console in 5 years, let's just, keep giving us a new one every year and a half, And I understand.
You know what's kind of hilarious about this is what they really did is just Nintendo Switch Slim, which is not a new concept.
Yeah.
They've done that forever. It's just an upgraded or slightly different version of a console that already exists, where they acknowledge certain flaws, change them, and enhance them, or remove things they didn't need.
Yep.
Storage is cheaper, so they can double it for you. They're like, okay, people were upset that we needed an adapter for broadband. Okay, we'll just give it to you in the dock. Yes, battery life is better now. Let's improve it. Screen technology is better and cheaper. Let's improve it. That's normal. That's a Genesis 2. That's a PS1 with an ONE. That's, an Xbox 360 Elite. This is not a new concept. What is a new concept is people... you're right. I don't remember when the Xbox 360 Elite was coming out, or the E or the S or any of those, that people were expecting it to suddenly run all games in 1080p, at 60 FPS, and somehow support HD DVD native or whatever.
Okay. That did happen though. That overhype did happen with the Xbox Elite, because I worked.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah,
everybody actually thought that it played HD DVDs, and I worked at Circuit City at the time, and I had to try to help people out so much. People were yelling at me. He's like, "Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does." I'm like, "Okay, fine. Take it home. Enjoy it." They have a separate.
To be fair,
the Elite also added HDMI to it, which was really big for the 360.
To be fair, there was going to be an HD DVD model of the 360, but they canceled it at the same time HD DVD died.
Yeah, but
and
it
they had
wasn't
the
Elite,
add-on.
that's for sure.
No, it wasn't. But there was an add-on. I could see why that'd be market confusion. Yeah. My simple point was they didn't go out of their way to people didn't generally believe that slim consoles were going to suddenly natively support a bunch of stuff that was never conceivable. Like a Genesis Model 2, I don't remember anybody thinking it was going to support 32 bits native. It wasn't really a thing. And I would pin that more on, honestly, the PS4 Pro and the Xbox One X kind of changing the game as far as what is expected for revisions. To be fair to that, though, you do look at Nintendo and you go, how is it that you're competing with the PS5, Xbox Series X, and you dare to have a console that can only output 720p?
But therein lies the problem in and of itself. People assume that it's still stupidly assumed that Nintendo is competing with Xbox and PlayStation.
Never.
They haven't in 15 years. They do their own thing and they don't give a shit.
They competed with PlayStation 1, and that was it. After that, it was done, pretty much.
Nintendo gave up direct competition with those two companies in a little time called 2006. When they gave up and said, the GameCube is over, we're doing this Wii thing, we're not trying anymore to go head-to-head with them, we're going into our own corner. And for better or for worse, that has worked for them. And, so that's how they're doing it. It's just what it is. I mean, I've said this for years. I still maintain it probably won't be too long until you see some sort of like Xbox Game Pass service on the Switch. I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Or at least some sort of Nintendo hardware. I think that'll still happen at some point. And, people will be like, but my Xbox games can only run 720p. Yeah, but now you can play them portably and don't pretend like you won't.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
See?
There's a lot of plane flights out there, man. That's what I use my Switch for.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see myself upgrading to this thing. Like if it, I might not go out and seek it, but if a used one comes into digital press or something like that, and I'm like, yeah, you know what, I might pick this up, and trade in my old Switch, But I'm like, so I'm fairly indifferent to it. I think I would get use out of it because I do play it portably. But Adam, I mean, like you're on the other end. It's like you basically leave this thing docked, So
yeah, that's where I was gonna say. Like to me, this is kind of like all to do about nothing. Like sure, it's better than the one I have, I guess.
Yeah.
All right, so here's how we address the differences. The better screen means absolutely nothing to me. I don't use it portably. So, boom, that's done. Better storage, that's cool. I have like a 400 gigabyte micro SD card in mine. So, I'm good. Doesn't really affect me. The extra 32 gigabytes mean nothing. And then the last point about the broadband connection. Well, I've had one of those USB to broadband dongle adapters. I'm not kidding. Since the Wii came out, because I bought it for that purpose. Yep. So all I did was connect it to this, and boom, done. And it's kind of useless when you're only using it for updates. I don't play online or download games literally ever, so it's only useful for updates. Yeah, I'll be okay. I don't need that, you know what I mean? So it really doesn't do anything for me. Would I get one? Maybe eventually to add to the collection or whatever, but there's no part of me that's like, day one, man, I gotta be all over that. For what? It's not gonna do anything for me. I'm still more interested in getting a PS5 as soon as Best Buy feels like selling them.
I had the chance to buy one last night, actually. Funny story, but I didn't.
Oh, okay.
Well, wow, what an exciting story, Rob.
Yeah, really good one.
Hey, Rob, yesterday I had a chance to watch a movie, but I didn't.
but I do want a PS5.
Keith, what did you have a chance yesterday to do but just didn't do?
You know what? I think I had a chance yesterday to actually get a brand new PlayStation 5, but I decided to, clip my toenails instead.
Wow. Well, see, he actually took action on his I didn't do it. Good for you, man.
Hey, don't forget, you got to clip them toenails. Very important.
It is.
Dr. Keith
hygiene,
says.
Man. Yeah, Dr. Keith knows what's up, especially with the
Dr. Keith.
Stuff.
Well,
that's a little bit from before the show started, everybody. Anyway,
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Going back to the slim model of Switch or whatever. I am actually curious because I do actually have a few friends and a few other people that have had trouble getting their hands on a second dock that actually want one to actually move it in. Because they kind of stopped producing them and stuff like that. I was able to get my hands on some used myself. But a lot of other people do want a second dock, so I can see the dock alone selling actually probably a decent amount, almost as much as the actual console itself sells, honestly. Yeah. I can see that as a market for sure, but I am curious to also see what the youth says, because I want to see if my nephew is super excited by this, So in the comments also, let us know if your kids are also excited about this new one, like they really want it for Christmas or something like that, And
or are they flying to San Francisco to get one?
Yeah. Hey, for a lot of parents, this one might be easier to find than a PlayStation 5,
Yeah.
It just happens sometimes.
it's a small sample size, but you know, I in my Discord where people were, by the way, you should join the Discord, everybody. People were talking about this, and the number one, you know, request was, I hope I can just buy the dock. That seems to be what people want, and the short answer is yes, you can.
I was really happy about that. I was really happy about that.
Yeah, but it seems like, again, I'm not a good case study because I do not play this thing online and I do not download games or anything like that. But I can see why that would be useful to certain people. So having the native broadband out is valuable. And it's cool of Nintendo, in all fairness, to be selling that separately to give you that option. So credit where credit's due.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, honestly, I could actually use the other Switch just to get my fiance off mine. You know what I'm saying? So, especially when the new Breath of the Wild comes out, she's gonna be on that forever. Jesus. So, getting a new models kind of helps out. It helps relationships. Trust me. You know, get your Switches.
Yeah, yeah. My girlfriend quite enjoys my Switch. She was playing a lot of Captain Toad's Treasure Tracker on that thing. It's nice. Yeah. You just put her off in the corner and let her play that. But anyway, so anything else that we have to say on the Nintendo Switch OLED model? Did we even say that? It has an OLED screen.
Yeah, that's what it's called. It's called the OLED model, right?
There you go.
Like from Nintendo. The only thing I have to say like that is like I'm pretty sure everything's. You don't have to worry about like your accessories or whatever. Joy-Cons should be interswitchable, no problem like that. It looks like they're all interswitchable, so that's good.
Yeah, if the dock is, I can't imagine that everything else would be
different. They said it's literally takes up the actual console is the same exact size, but the screen is just takes up more of the console, if you know what I mean. That's what they said.
Yeah. It's the same frame, but just a slightly bigger screen. Which,
exactly.
By the way, the screen on the original Switch does take up most of the shell, so that would assume that the screen really isn't that much bigger, which is fine. It's just a cleaner, nicer type of screen.
There's technically a little black like border around it, so that's probably the get rid of that. That's probably it.
Yeah, so it's a little bigger. Yeah. Cool. You want a Switch Pro? Add an M Classic to your Switch. That's all I can really tell you.
Give me like a cool version of this with like the new Metroid coming out, and if it was like a Metroid version of the Switch, I might think about it. But that's a different situation.
You know, that's probably going to happen. Let's keep it real.
I'm down.
Like. I mean, there's no, you know, we don't know that for sure, everybody, but like, don't forget, we actually, earlier this year, we saw Nintendo's E3 Direct, and they basically told us, like, hey, we're not doing anything else special. Then out of nowhere, they're like, oh, by the way, here's an OLED Nintendo Switch.
It's because it's nothing special. That's why.
Right. Yeah. Never trust, you know what I'm saying, though? Never trust Nintendo not to lie to you.
Very true.
They do that all the time. They lie constantly.
Ultra 64.
Yeah. It's, you know, this is going to sound a little messed up, but I'm going to tell you a side story here. So there is a reason. This is truth. So, you know, in the United States, corporations are not allowed to publicly lie. It's something that's considered slander. So you can't do that. However, there's no such law in Japan. So it's actually kind of a common problem where in Japanese publications they tell the public one thing, knowing full well that it's not going to be the case, which is almost always why Nintendo Switch announcements and Nintendo announcements in general are done through Nintendo Japan, just simply translated, because if they just want to control the narrative, they can do so by basically saying, we're definitely not doing this, and then do it anyway. Or they say we are doing this, and then nothing happens with it, like Metroid Prime 4.
Oh my god!
It is actually. I'm not even joking. This is a real thing. It's like a dodge maneuver that's done. So basically, all I'm saying is, never really trust Nintendo's word on a lot of things. You know, ultimately, you're probably going to get the games you want. You'll probably get the hardware you want. But when they say, "Hey, something is confirmed," it's not. And when something is not happening, it might be, is all I'm really saying. All I'm saying is you can't really trust the word of their mouth. That's all.
And if you want to see evidence of this, I mean, really just look at some, watch a couple of videos of YouTubers who are primarily Nintendo Switch-esque, and they have the craziest videos sometimes. Just the craziest rumors that they get. Most of the time, straight from Japan, which I think is funny, which goes to your point, Adam.
Yeah. So, anyway, that's it for this particular subject, I think. You guys ready to move on?
Yeah, well.
All right, so our last subject here, sorta kinda comes from Connor Wright. He is a backer who gets the chance. He has the opportunity to pick a subject every month. But for some reason, Connor, I hope you're like not dead. I haven't heard from this dude in like 3 months. Every time I ask him like what subject you want, I just get ghosted. So I keep having to pick a subject on his behalf. So Connor, he keeps paying, so he's obviously not. I don't know. But anyway, Connor, we love you, but, you know, respond to the message, man. But anyway, so
dealer's
in this case,
choice, man. Dealer's choice.
Yeah. He used to give us subjects, and even if Connor, if you don't want a subject, just tell me that, and we'll make it up for you. But we're just worried about you. But anyway, so Connor Wright, in this case, the subject is going to be about limited run games and just kind of what's going on with them. Rob and I were talking a little bit before, and we had a few things that we kind of wanted to say about them. First. I don't know if I know, Rob, you saw this because I showed it to you directly, but Keith, did you see this thing where Limited Run Games sent out a 5-year anniversary coin to people?
No, I did not. What is that?
So I actually got it. So there's basically Limited Run Games is now 5 years old, believe it or not, and they sent out this medallion inside of a PS Vita case, like this. I'll show a picture of it here. I'll show a picture in the video, not you. Sorry, Keith, I can't send it to you right now. But yeah. Anyway, well, if you check my Twitter, you can see it there. But anyway, they sent this case to everybody who bought Breach and Clear, and then bought at least one game a year for the last 5 years, which I happen to have done. So I got this thing, and it was just kind of a cool little perk that they did that for people. But you know, we kind of thought about it, and we're like, you know, that's kind of an interesting opportunity to kind of talk about them and, you know, their company and how they're kind of they're blowing up, they're getting more successful, to the point where I know we've had discussions in the past, like almost like, are they too successful? Because you're getting physical editions of games that you're like, is this even necessary? You know, I mean, like stuff like that. Also, hilariously, so, you know, are you familiar with the joke about how Rob sometimes pronounces Limited Run Games as Limited Run James?
Yep.
Yeah, so I decided today on Twitter to post the image of this coin thing, and I was just tagging Limited Run people to find out there actually is a Limited Run James. It's a verified account. There is actually a dude at Limited Run Games named Limited Run James, which made me laugh so hard. I would love to believe that Limited Run James just came into existence because of this joke. It's probably not how it worked out, but I'd love to believe that.
Oh, that's perfectly fine, Rob, man. Live the dream, man.
Rob, I know you had some specific things you wanted to talk about, so go for it, man.
Yeah, so over the past few years, in addition to releasing physical editions of indie games, which has kind of been their MO since they started 5 years ago, Limited Run has been doing these re-releases of games that were on previous console generations, sometimes going as far back as like the 3rd and 4th gen. Notably, they've done things like Night Trap. They've re-released Shantae on the Game Boy Color, on a Game Boy Color cartridge. Very, very cool. Basically, taking a game that was prohibitively expensive for most people, and most people wanted, and re-releasing it and giving it a stage to kind of show how cool this game is for the original Game Boy Color. And what my topic was, asking both the listeners and you guys, what are some of your, if you worked for Limited Runs and you had access to re-release any old game, you know, on even not necessarily on a new console, but on their original console, maybe a hidden gem that's very expensive, or finishing a game that was never released, things like that, what would you have them release?
I want to add a little bit of a qualifier to this, because we have to understand certain actual parameters to this. So first of all, the original developer has to be, you know, cooperative to this. Like LucasArts and Lucasfilm, EA, Disney have been okay with them doing Star Wars stuff, which is why you've been able to reissue Star Wars content. The hardware-wise, you'll notice that the games are either on cartridges that are relatively easy to reproduce now, N64, Super Nintendo, NES, etc. even Genesis. But they're now doing reissues of Sega CD games. Well, the Sega CD is a console that has absolutely no disc protection. Where you're going to start running into problems is there's no such thing as an active PS1, Sega Saturn, PS2, or Dreamcast disc presser anymore. So realistically, you'll never see games from those consoles get reissued. Dreamcast is a little different because technically you could do it through the Mill CD exploit and all that. But I can tell you firsthand, having talked to Doug at Limited Run Games, they're not really interested in doing Dreamcast unless they can get access to a GD-ROM presser, which is, I can also tell you, essentially impossible. So you have to kind of understand it within those parameters before you can just start saying, yeah, of course, I would like, every super rare game for all those consoles to get reissued when it's totally not possible. I can't be, and we also know, by the way, they'll never do Xbox stuff because Microsoft simply will not allow them to do it. I don't know why. Microsoft is really uncooperative. All I've ever heard from Doug about that was that Microsoft has minimum threshold orders that are in like the 10 to 20,000 range, and Limited Run's like, we just want to do like 1,000 to 3,000, and Microsoft will not change that policy. And it's very strange when Nintendo is more reasonable than Microsoft, but that's the case. So I'm sorry to get all real on you here, but with all those parameters in place, now what would you do? Personally, I would love to see Snatcher get re-released.
That's my big one, yeah, too. Snatcher.
And you actually own a legit copy, don't you?
I do.
Whoa,
yeah.
wow.
But it would be nice to sell my legit copy and just get the re-release.
Honestly, just for like playing it alone, I wouldn't want to play my Snatcher disc that much. That'd be rough. I don't know. Sometimes
that's why a re-release would be good.
Exactly.
But Konami, who I believe they own the rights to Snatcher, right?
Yeah.
No,
they don't own the rights to it, or is it Kojima?
No. So there's a little bit of a story with this, and I don't know exactly where it leads. Do you guys know the YouTuber Gamester81?
Yeah.
Yes.
So I don't know the circumstances of how this happened. At some point, he somehow got the rights to Snatcher.
That's hilarious.
Like, as an individual, he owned Snatcher, and he was working on a dream.
Okay.
He was working on a Dreamcast re-release of it. This was a project that was started a few years ago. Then it just kind of went away, and there's been no update about it since. I don't know if he since lost the rights. I've never asked him about it directly because he doesn't talk about it, so it sounds like there's something that happened there. It's not my business. But I do know that Konami does not actually own the rights to that game.
That's interesting.
Wow. Huh.
Yeah. It was one of those games that just the rights of it fell through the cracks, and the last known owner, to me anyway, was John Gamester81.
But you know what? That does make it realistic to do, though. If they reached out to either John, or if for some reason the rights defaulted back to Kojima or Konami or whatever. Konami's actually been fairly cooperative with Limited Run. They just recently announced that they're re-releasing, actually for the first time releasing Rondo of Blood on the Turbo Duo.
Oh yeah,
I'm totally getting that. I'm totally getting that.
I mean, that's amazing that they were able to finally English translate the game and put it on the original system that it was released for. That's fantastic.
And the fact that they would even do it is crazy, because
for that system in particular.
Aside from literally myself, I do not know anyone that has, much less an operational PC Engine CD or TurboGrafx CD. And yet they're like, we're doing it anyway. That to me is nuts, and I guarantee it's only because that console has no disc protection of any kind. So you can just do a generic CD-ROM pressing and it'll work. But if it had even the most basic of disc protection, like a PS1's wobble or a Saturn wobble, they would never have done it.
They must be comfortable doing it. One, because it's a game that legendarily did not get released in America. It only came out on the PC Engine Duo in Japan. Was the success, assumed success, of their Sega CD re-releases. Of the Secret of Monkey Island, the Star Wars games. They wouldn't do a release for a console that obscure or that old if their previous ventures into that territory weren't at least somewhat successful. So, and I honestly, I anticipate people buying this game even though they don't have the system. I don't have one. I'm going to buy it. A Castlevania
just
collectors
for the Castlevania
will buy it.
collectors. The amount of people who will actually be able to get it and play it, on legit hardware, mind you, will be ludicrously limited. My guess is most of the people who get it with any intention of playing it will do it through either emulation means or even, well, while it's still technically emulation, something like a Poly Station where it can just kind of play whatever.
Polymega.
Polymega. That's all the same bullshit at this point. But yeah, that's that Famicom clone thing. But whatever. Anyway, so my guess is the number of people who are actually like, hey man, I'm plopping this into a PC Engine CD is going to be ludicrously limited. But one of the coolest things working for them now is if you actually are the guy with an American TurboGrafx 16 and an American TurboGrafx 16 CD, despite the cartridge slot being region locked, the disk drive is not. As odd as that is. So you can put Japanese games in the disk drive and they'll work, which means even if this was region coded, it really isn't, and it would totally function.
Yep. I mean, it's a great. It really just plays to their fan base, you know, and video games as a whole. That like they took the time and they're like, hey, why don't we do this? Like, why, like, you know, if we can get the rights, Konami for the first time in forever has been a little bit cooperative. You know, let's see what we could do, and I love them for that.
Yeah, I can't imagine they're going to do any other PC Engine CD or TurboGrafx CD re-releases, though. I think that's the only one that had a shot. I think it... See, I don't know how much dev work they're putting into this. Like, you're mentioning that it is English translated, which has never been a thing, at least on the original format, which means to some extent they had to go back to the source code. So there's some development work in there. I could envision some sort of TurboGrafx or PC Engine collection on disc, but again, that's dev work, and I don't know how much of that they're willing to do. So it's not impossible, but outside of that, I just can't. I don't think there's a single game on that console they would bother with.
Just going back to the original question of like what kind of re-releases under our kind of established rules would I like to see. Going back to the Sega CD for a second, a system that Limited Run has already worked with, and they've even done games from this publisher. I would love to see a re-release of KO Flying Squadron, which is a shoot-'em-up / cute-'em-up for the Sega CD. It's probably the most expensive game on the console now. Published by JVC. And they've already done the Star Wars game, which was LucasArts, but was published by JVC. I don't know who has the rights to that game now, but I know there was a sequel on the Saturn. But that'd be amazing to like. I mean, basically, I love to see these expensive games kind of be accessible for people, not necessarily through like a bootleg, but through a somewhat like a half legitimate release, because obviously Limited Run is an original release, hence why the versions of Shantae on the Game Boy Color that were originally released are still hundreds, if not thousands of dollars, and the re-releases aren't. So I think it'd be cool to see more projects like that. How about you, Keith, though? What do you think?
Well, actually, usually I would go to a lot of old Genesis games, which are pretty rare, but I actually tend to think that market's kind of covered with repro carts most of the time.
But they have done Genesis. They just did Wily Wars on the Genesis.
Yes, I know.
Release, so.
They did, but the stuff that
they're doing Zombies Ate My Neighbors.
The stuff that I want, I kind of already have in repro form, which would be like the, which is like the Punisher game, is one of the main ones I wanted, which I got a repro of, which is really good. But I was
Musha or something like that.
I was actually wondering how their Sega Saturn is. I don't know. Do they have...
It's not possible. Not possible.
Yeah.
The only way for Saturn to read burned games is through something called like a mod chip or something called Pseudo Saturn, which is a cartridge that goes in the Yeah.
If you had an original disc presser, you could do it, but you don't. That doesn't exist anymore. So the disc protection on a Sega Saturn is like a PS1. It has what's called a wobble. It basically uses a defect in the not burning, but the writing process that the machine left in it. That's how the Saturn detects whether or not it's a legitimate disc. You cannot recreate that through software. You can only recreate it through a physical defect. Think of it like ballistics, leaving an imprint when you shoot
exactly.
it.
It's like a certain thing it doesn't hit every time.
Right. So therefore, Sega Saturn, without the original hardware, you can't do it. Yeah. PS1 cannot do it. PS2 cannot do it. Dreamcast original versions cannot do it. You could do mil-CD stuff, but they're not willing to. There are some consoles you just can't touch. So the only retro ones you're going to get that use discs are the ones that had no disc protection of any kind to begin with.
Well,
Jaguar CD?
Yeah.
Jaguar CD did have disc protection.
Oh, it did? Wow.
It's actually really uniquely complicated. It is bypassable, but it's strange. This is a needless story, but basically, if you're going to rip it, it's smart enough to know if you're trying to rip it, so it will rip intentionally as the wrong size. Whereas there's one program that can rip it if you tell it if you tell the program, hey, this is a music CD, even though it's not, it will rip it as the correct thing. I don't know how somebody figured that out, but they did.
All right.
The Jaguar CD is surprisingly complicated.
I was mainly saying the Saturn because I've always actually wanted Guardian Heroes, but it's always been too expensive. It's been out of my range for a while, and that's a game I've always wanted, like, for the longest time. I kind of wish they do a remake of that, but there's a lot of Saturn games that are unfortunately going to fall to the wayside.
Oh, dude. Everybody wants Saturn stuff.
I know.
It's unique in how impossible it is. You can't reproduce it. You can't really emulate it. You can't really re-release any of it. It's just forever trapped on that one machine.
Yeah, I got a great Saturn collection going. That's just one of the ones that are missing. But another thing I would really like to see is actually, I don't know if this is possible, but to actually get some more light gun games. Like, basically what I'm saying is, like, light gun games converted to the more recent consoles is what I'm saying. So maybe like something that like all those Wii light gun games can be played on the Switch type of thing. That's something I've always wanted as well.
That might be possible.
I think it would be because of I think it would have the motion controls to pull it off and stuff like that. It wouldn't be too hard to get the rights redone. For most
I don't know if that's even the PS4 uses the Move controllers from the PS3 for their VR system, so it's possible.
Yeah, because there's
I just don't know if that's limited runs thing.
Yeah,
that's all.
It's not, but this is a dream. That's right. I was just dreaming because honestly, a lot of stuff I would want reproduced. They've either done it, or I think they're working on it. So I mean, I don't have any thing too much other than that.
All right,
but I really am excited that limited runs is in stores for like a lot of people that don't do online shopping. You can go to Best Buy and they actually sell a lot of limited run games, so you guys can check that out.
Yeah, that's a very good point. And it's the one that I actually kind of want them to do is they did Streets of Rage 4, but now Streets of Rage 4 is getting like some big update and it's going to have new DLCs and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah,
it probably won't have. Yeah, so they probably won't have another physical edition, so it'd be kind of nice if they handled that, I guess.
But they've also done, non-limited run releases of Streets of Rage 4 on PS4, Xbox One, and Switch. So
I know, but they don't have the DLC on it.
Yeah, but it's possible that that could get like the Game of the Year definitive edition, not necessarily through limited run.
Right, that's essentially what I'm proposing. It's just how they go about distributing it. Either it's limited run or it's just regular retail.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really hope they can get all that stuff, new stuff physical, because that's just, I hate if it's all just stuck in DLC land. All that new stuff for Streets of Rage anyways.
Yeah. So anything else?
No,
like I said, right. I think keep it up, limited run. We love you, and if you don't know who they are, look them up. Happy 5th birthday. Adam's got the coin.
Yes. I do have the coin. Happy 5th birthday, Limited Run Games. So with that will be the end of the show here. First of all, I want to thank you, Keith, for joining and being back as always.
You're welcome. Love to be here.
Abdullah, we missed you, but hopefully everything works out and you and your family get well soon. We wanted to give shout outs to Leafy Poo and Connor Wright, as well as Amy Girl, Joseph Tamburino, Julian Espinoza, Luis Bonilla, Loke, Michael Kelly, and Trey Wagner, as well as everyone else who is a contributor to the Patreon, and just anybody who listens. Plus, I guess, Rob, what Horse Armor, how are we going out here? How are we ending this?
How are we ending this? Goodbye, cruel world.
And next time you guys need advice, talk to Dr. Keith.
Yes, Dr. Keith.
Dr. Keith, podiatrist.
Anything with feet, really.
Yeah, that's
a foot guy.
Basically, he's going to become a foot therapist on television. That was what we were kind of talking about beforehand. So if you're going to have foot problems, any sort of think Dr. Phil, but all problems have to be pertaining to feet related issues. That's a show of the future. You guys aren't ready for it this year. Eventually, society has to catch up. Anyway, thanks everybody for joining us, and we'll see you all later.